So
We are live.
we're live.
I'll start the recording.
All right. All right. Welcome back to another CryptoVagabonds Q&A. And also let's take the opportunity to welcome back Mia. Mia went on a journey. Now she's back from vacation, let's say. So welcome back. We are a bit late, so let me start straight in the presentation of today. Today we're going to try to explain, and I think the topic of today is also very relevant because of what's going on in Venezuela. So if people want to understand a little bit about how dictatorships work, we have today a breaking down how and who controls Iran. So I think that will help you guys understand a bit more of what's going on with Venezuela. So without any further ado, let me get straight into the presentation. Let you guys know when you can see my screen.
At the moment, it's black. Yeah, now we can see it.
Okay, so as usual, we have to have the disclaimer. Nothing that we produce is to be financial tax or legal advice. All our content is just for information, educational, and entertainment purposes only. Also, one thing that I want to add here as a disclaimer, we don't claim this to be absolute. If you do not agree with us, please let us know in the commentaries, and we're willing to discuss and open to a new perspective. So this Q&A does occur on every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. And you can also interact with us, of course, in Clubhouse, Tuesday to Friday at 7 a.m. Eastern Time. All our programs are scheduled with Eastern Time. You can also, of course, interact with us here in YouTube, Instagram, and X. So I did not plan to be like this, but it's coming to me in a very good time, this presentation. We're going to try to break down and give an idea of who controls Iran, on how does the hierarchy works in Iran and who is in charge, but also gives us an insight on how dictatorships work. And even though it's not related, it will help you to understand Venezuela, I hope. And after this, I think I'm going to get more questions, not about Iran, but about Venezuela. But if you guys have questions about Iran, I'll be more than happy to answer those as well. So we're going to have the following roadmap. First, we're going to talk about the duality on Iran. And I think a lot of people don't understand that explicitly, but they have understand implicit of the duality. I want to get into that as we go into presentation. And then we're going to be talking about the Evolutionary Guard of Iran. We're going to be talking about some history and background on how Iran got where they are. And then we're going to also break down the power structure and also going to give more conclusions on where Iran is today and what are the challenges they're facing in the future. So what triggered me to make this presentation was the conflict between Iran and Israel. So on April 21st, 2024, the Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei boasted about an attack that he made on Israel. What most people may not know is that that attack was actually very well coordinated with the US and a few other allies via Turkey. And the reason why that attack was coordinated is because, in my view, that was a show. It was an attack for the world to see, or for the Iranian nation to see. He couldn't afford to actually attack and cause serious damage to Israel. So there was a coordination. And in my view, that was positive for Iran because it's the first time in decades that Iran has an open channel of communication with the US. So they made an attack on Israel, which didn't damage Israel at all. And Israel did not counterattack because there was no attack. It was just something for the world to see. However, there was also the death of the president that came later, and that was interpreted as a possible counterattack of Israel, which wasn't, at least not in my view. So April 21st, there was this attack that the leader, Ali Khamenei, could show to the population. Now, it also shows and emphasizes the strength of the will of the Iranian nation and the military international stage, because imagine, never before had Iran directly attacked Israel. So that attack was something that really put a new landmark on Iran. And in my view, that's very positive for Iran, not as positive to Israel. So the attack on Israel was conducted by the militia. It's important to understand that the militia does not carry Iran or Iran military or the name of Iran on their name. And here I want to introduce you to the duality that is happening with Iran. Iran has to decide if they are a country or if they are a cause for Islam. So the militia is called the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. And like I mentioned to you guys, it does not mention Iran on its name, and that's very intentional. That means that this militia is not defending the interests of the nation or the country, but is defending the interests of a revolution, of an Islamic cause. And of course, that creates a confusion. Is Iran a rational state actor? And when we talk about the rational state actor, I want to bring back the attention to a video I have made to you guys before, talking about geopolitics. Is Iran a country that thinks geopolitically, or is Iran an ideologically, like an ideology group or a cause for Iran? And if it is an ideology, then it's not a rational entity, and you cannot interact with Iran as a rational country that's trying to preserve itself. You have to interact with them as an ideology. An ideology doesn't care about the territory. So those are like the main difference. If it is a state, it's trying to preserve its population, preserve its sovereignty, preserve its territory. Now, if it is a cause, the territory may not be as important, the population may not be as important, but the ideal becomes more important. So, and of course, not all the population in Iran carries that ideology, because there are many religions within Iran. There are Christians, there are Zoroastrians, there are different branches of Islam within Iran. So portion of the population are not really in line with that idea of being a Muslim cause. So now the idea would be like to find out who is who are the citizens that are pro the national identity and who are in alignment with the cause or the Islamic cause. So the Revolutionary Guard was formed in 1979, and it was pretty much an organization of many different various Islamic militias that were loyal to Khomeini. Now, Khomeini was one person who rejected the idea of Iran as a country, and he always believed on the idea of the Islamic Revolution and Iran leading that revolution. And he made a few things to emphasize that point. And one of them was he declared the Quds Day, the last Friday of Ramadan, is a day that is anti-Israel. So he takes a holiday that is used like in scary, it's the most important holiday for all the Islamic people. And he said the last day of that holiday, which is a 30 day of fasting, he made a day which is that last day is not about the holiday of Islam or the holiday of many religious people, but it's now an anti-Israel day, which again brings the idea of the Islamic State opposing Israel. And here is this power structure on who controls Iran. A lot of people think, oh, Iran has a president, but they don't know that president doesn't have any control, any power. You can see here, all the power comes from or passed by the supreme leader. So for instance, if you want to be a president, you must be approved by the supreme leader to be a candidate. So that means supreme leader has control over you. So assembly of experts, guard council, experience council, the military forces, provincial representatives, foundations, leaders, all of them come from the supreme leader. So you can see by the power structure that everything is run by the supreme leader. Now, it is convenient for the supreme leader to have a president, because then whatever is the function of the president, the supreme leader can blame the president for not being able to solve whatever problems. Now, the question is, would the president even have the tools to solve that problem? And the answer is no. So now, after Khomeini's death in 1989, Khamenei became the supreme leader, and he started to change things within the country to make sure that the power structure serves him as a supreme leader. Now, it's important to understand that in Iran, for the population, there cannot be such thing as a royal family or power pass by generation to generation, because the very formation of the country of Iran rejects that view. But it seems that that is what the power structure now enables. And because he tried to restructure Iran from inside, he found some opposing forces. One was the reformists led by Mohammed Khatami, and the other one was the centrist Akbar, I don't know if I can pronounce this, Rafazani. And it's important to understand that Akbar and him were friends. They seemed to be allies until he became in power, and then he started to oppose the views of his centrist friend Akbar. So basically, he wants Iran to be just this leading force for Islamic revolution. Reformists want Iran to be a country independent from religion and have better relations with other countries. This guy Akbar wants Iran to be partially closed, partially independent from religion, and partially connected to the West, but still remaining its sovereignty and being a bit more closed. So he's the only one that carries the idea that Iran must be this pushing force for the Islamic revolution. Now, Khamenei have used the Revolutionary Guard to suppress anyone that opposes him, even his friend Akbar, and he used that force to pretty much crush everyone, similar to the way that Hitler used the SS force to just crush anyone who was against him. Now, it's important to understand that those guards, they don't act only within like the geography of the country of Iran. They also conduct attacks outside. In the 90s, those attacks became very present in Europe, Argentina. They were really like showing their force by attacking Israeli targets, such as embassies and a few other buildings that are specifically important to Jewish people, not just embassies, especially in Argentina. Now, there are also this idea that Iran wants to become a nuclear power, superpower, and have nuclear capability. And in 2015, there was an agreement signed between Iran and the other 5 nations that carries nuclear powers. However, and here's something that I think Trump did very right. President Trump nullified that deal. He realized that Iran was not behaving as a country, but was behaving as a force for the revolution. So Donald Trump pretty much abandoned any nuclear deal with Iran, saying that he doesn't believe that Iran should have a nuclear capacity. Now, that rejection plus some other sabotage on advancement for Iran on nuclear forces gave leverage to the supreme leader to say that they have to be opposing the West, and also gave him more power to criticize and shut down anyone that's opposing to him, because there was a lot of investment from Iran in trying to become a nuclear capability. And the sabotage plus Donald Trump saying we don't want to have a deal gives leverage to him and his agenda. So in my view, Iran is now more repressed than have been in the past 20 years. They have a lot of diplomatic issues because they're becoming very diplomatic isolated. They are only pretty much making deals with Russia and China. And they're very economically weakened because they cannot really trade internationally. And you can see that, for instance, represented on the death of the president with the accident on a helicopter. Now, in my view, Iran is on that point on, are we going to be a nation? Or are we going to be this revolutionary force? Now, as I already mentioned, the former president died on an accident, and there were a lot of speculation on, was he that sabotaged by Israel? Was a counterattack by Israel? In my view, like I say to you guys, I think it was just an accident because they are close in terms of trade. Their airplanes, their helicopters, they don't have much access to parts as, for instance, helicopters in Europe would have. So to me, it was either an accident, but if it was not an accident, the question is, who benefits with the death of the president? And remember, the president doesn't have much power, but there's a few things that the president is entitled to. And if you look at what the president could possibly be, you start to see who benefits from all of this. And my point is the supreme leader, which as you can see is the dictator of Iran, he is now 85 years old and he's in poor health. Now, if you're a dictator, you cannot be seen in poor health. And if you have any questions about this, just look how Vladimir Putin boasts his physical health. Like, I think there's a picture of him like on a horse without a shirt. a leader, a dictator, he must be showing strength at all times, because if he shows weakness, people are going to get together and try to take him down and take the power. So the supreme leader is in a weak position, and he's 85 years old. And the question is, who's going to replace him? Well, there were two candidates that could replace him. One was the president, who died in May, and the other one is his son. Now, it's important to understand that whoever replaces him has to be a candidate, has to appear as chosen by the people. It cannot be just him, by the father, who is a king, giving the throne to his son, because that is not accepted in Iran. So if you look at the greatest benefactor, the one to benefit the most, is the supreme leader himself, because he's weak, and there are possibilities of his son or the president having to fight for that position. Now, if the president is dead, there's no fight within the country, just his son takes over. Now, his son is about 30 years younger than him. That means if his son just becomes leader, there's another 30 years, or at least 20 years of secure trajectory of where Iran is going to go, because obviously the son is going to follow the steps of the father. So the country is no longer divided. And I think the son becoming the supreme leader ensures the future of Iran. So the death of the president does not benefit Israel, it benefits the people within Iran. So to me, it could also be a sabotage or a plot made internally, where all the candidates that could possibly replace the supreme leader are now dead. The last one was the president is dead, so now his son is the natural one to take over the power. Now, that again gives my conclusion about the situation for Iran. I think with the death of the president this year, I think the future of Iran will depend on what they want to do. Like I say, become a revolutionary force for the ideology of this radical Islam, or becomes a state. And given the death of the president, I'll say for the next 20 years, Iran will be this force for the revolutionary radical Islamic state, and will not be a country for the next 2 decades. That's my guess. I could be wrong. Time will tell us. So that's my view on where Iran is today and where they're going to be for the next 20 years. Unless something drastically happens, if the son takes over the power and remain in power for the next 20, 30 years, that's where I see Iran going. So I want to give a recap to you guys. We spoke about the duality. I hope I made clear that Iran is the one country that has a dual identity, either a force for the radical Islam or a country. We spoke briefly about the Revolutionary Guard and how they operate within and outside Iran, and they don't carry the name Iran on their name. I gave some very brief historical background and I hope I explained to you guys how Iran's power structure is organized. And I think most dictatorships will try to organize something like the structure of Iran one way or another. The democratic election is not really that significant for dictatorships. So if you want to find out more about those things, find out more about cryptocurrencies and how geopolitical events affect cryptocurrencies and being controlled for money, consider joining the Academy. Link for that on the description below. And with this, I end the presentation. And again, I think it comes coincidentally in a good time, given the situation that's happening in Venezuela. So I hope it makes sense to you guys.
There is something with your camera.
Oh.
There was a message earlier that the battery was low in the beginning when you went.
I see what happened.
Mm-hmm.
I need to change okay, I know what happened. So I'm here, you guys can ask questions or speak more. Yeah.
Ilya has joined us. Welcome, Ilya. And Carl as well.
Okay, now I have to, I'll fix that. Hold on a second.
Yeah,
okay,
it's
there
good.
we go. Okay. Yeah, unfortunately, I traveled with the actual battery and I forgot to put the dummy battery. So now it's not gonna finish in time soon. Sorry about that. So any questions, anyone, about the situation in Venezuela or the situation with Iran? This was just like a few strokes on like how the structure works.
So my question to you would be, what do you see similar between those two?
what I see is similar is any dictatorship, they give you a facade of a power structure, but you never know who is really controlling the game. Like, I wouldn't be surprised, for instance, if Maduro is not even significant to the whole situation in Venezuela. The same way that a lot of people believe they had a president in Iran. Like, most people saw the death of the president and think, oh, the leader of the country has died. And I'm willing to bet that most people here do not know that the president is just a very significant figure for Iran. And part of me, I think also, if you ask yourself, like, is Maduro the real leader? Is he the one pulling the strings, or is he just a face for the world to see? So I think that is similar, because dictatorships, they organize their power in a way that gives the illusion of democracy, but you never see who is behind the curtains pulling the strings. Does it make sense? Like, in the case of Iran, you can research and find that very clearly. I think in Venezuela is a bit unclear for the rest of the world how the structure of power works. But what I want to give is, like, the idea that the president doesn't really control the country. There's something behind the curtains more powerful than the president. I think in the case of Venezuela and in the case of Iran is very similar. Does it make sense, Cora?
Yeah, I think I mentioned to you that there is a guy that most people don't know, internationally. His name is Diosdado Cabello. We do know him. He has a program, like a TV show where he speaks, and he say everything he thinks about the situation in the country and what's gonna change and everything. But it's just, insight is for the channels of the country. And we know that honestly, he has been there since Chavez, and he's still there. So he has been there more time than Chavez and more time than Maduro, and he's really the one who's making the choices. So that person exists.
And one thing I want to also explain, another similarity that I see here between Iran and Venezuela, and now it's not just Venezuela. We need to make a video here explaining to you guys about who controls Latin America. Because I know it sounds ridiculous, but I hope I can make a point to you guys here that the entire Latin America is not run by any president. There is a force behind every president, or at least every left president in Latin America. There's an agenda by a big organization, and they're very blunt. They have their website. They talk, like, they're not hiding this behind the curtain. This is very obvious. You can research this, which is the photo of São Paulo. So Latin America, Venezuela, Brazil, the countries, whenever they get the left parties elected, they're all connected to the Foro de São Paulo, and the Foro de São Paulo sponsor those political parties to entire Latin America. It is literally a Marxist organization, and they're not hiding. Like I said, Lula speaks very highly of Foro de São Paulo many times when he speaks to the public, but the public has no idea who's Foro de São Paulo. And behind Foro de São Paulo, the main sponsors of Foro de São Paulo, for instance, is China and Russia. So there's China and Russia supporting this entity that gives support to the narco trafficantes in Latin America and sponsor political parties that runs the entire continent. So I think we can also explain that here to you guys, because most people just see Brazil and they see Argentina and they think in the same way as if it's a country in Europe or a country in North America, but geopolitically it's different. So for instance, one small difference is countries that make borders with Brazil, they tend to be the route for drugs that needs to get to the US or gets to Europe. Whereas if you go to countries like Mexico, North America, Canada, or Europe, those countries are not route for drugs passage, they are the destination, and that changes the geopolitics of the country as well. So, and China and Russia, they profit from sponsoring the drug cartels in those regions. So even fentanyl that comes to the US gets direct sponsorship from China and Russia. So we can make a note there to make a video about the Foro de São Paulo and how the drug cartels are controlled by China and Russia, and they use that to undermine the sovereignty and authority of the countries in South America and North America. Go ahead, Evelyn. Beautiful image, Evelyn.
We're in Leo season.
Oh, that's very
Okay.
beautiful.
My question or hypothesis in relation to Argentina, being that the elections were rigged, was not what the people wanted. And from the info that we're getting in the United States is that the people are really pissed about that. And it's creating, I guess, like a movement for a revolution to overthrow the government at this point. How successful would something like that be against the ruling class anyway, if what you say is what is?
Yeah, so I think you're talking about Venezuela. So to me, and here's the thing though, this whole thing with Venezuela took him by surprise. Not surprised by the results of the elections. I remember I was talking to Cora, and Cora was like, following the elections on Venezuela. And I was like, why you're following? Maduro is going to win. Like dictatorships, whatever elections on dictatorships is just there for the show. And she's like, I don't know if she believed or not. I don't think she was expecting Maduro to, but she was she wants to be in connection with what's happening in Venezuela. So next morning when I get up, I think she played, she like, in a joking way asked me like, guess who won? I was like, I don't have to guess. It was Maduro. And it was Maduro, but what took him by surprise is the fact that it seems like the population was not expecting that. Like the population of Venezuela were surprised with the results of the election. And yes, I think they are today, in my view, they are in a stage of civil war. I think Cora can mention what's happening there now, and then I can talk about. I'm gonna say already. I don't see Maduro coming down. I don't see the people who are in power coming down, and I don't think this strategy of what's happening now is helpful. And I'm gonna explain why I don't think it's helpful after Cora explains what's going on there now. So go ahead, Cora.
So it's pretty sad. The people, they got pissed, pretty angry, and they started to go out to try to fight with the national defense, police. And the leader of the opposition, she said that it should be peaceful, but in the end it was not. So it started to get worse and worse, and basically now some of the national defense are with the people. That is new because this is like the third or fourth time that this situation happens there. And but it's the first time that the national defense is part of them are with the people, like helping them or protecting them. But there is, of course, another part that is not. And now they are kidnapping people. They are like literally going to their houses. Of course, politicians are the first target, but also just general people, normal people that maybe they posted something like, we have to fight for our freedom, so let's get out of your houses, something like that. And sometimes they get that information and they go to the house of this person, they kidnap. There is already, I know people, like friends of my brother, a friend of mine, and a guy that I was working with him some time ago. They are in jail right now because they were, there was a couple friends with my brother. They were literally just outside their house, like just standing there, and they came for them, and it's already 48 hours and they are still there in prison. They don't know what's gonna happen. There is one of them that we don't know anything about him, and they already killed kids, grandpas. Like it's super crazy right now. And I mean, physically, that's what's happening right now.
Yeah,
Anything?
so they also, I think they're shooting masses. There have been like a few like exchange of bullets and
crashing people with cars. If there is a concentration of people out of the blue, or all of a sudden there's a car who killed a couple. or kill some of them, some injured. Like it's just whatever you imagine, pretty much.
So my view is this, because we are on one side. I told I think it's important to hear both sides, right? So for instance, we are in one bubble where we believe the whole election was rigged and Maduro did not win and he's a dictator. That's one bubble, and we seem to be speaking from that bubble, right? My theory is if you go to the other bubble, because there is another bubble, there's an opposing bubble where they believe Maduro was rightfully elected, and this is an attempt from the imperialists, the USA, trying to get access to the petrol of Venezuela, and Maduro is defending the resource for the population. There's also that bubble. And in my view, is divide and conquer. So whatever this election has, elections, again, they tend to be an instrument to reinforce power of the dictator. And I think this election is going to be no different. I don't see whatever's happening there having any chance of success of taking down Maduro. I want to give you my idea of what would be a solution. And the day I see that, I'll say, okay, that's going to work. Okay. So my idea is this. Let's say 80% of the population are against Maduro. Just to throw a number. Because if the number is below 80%, it doesn't matter. It's not going to work. But let's say they have that 80% majority that do not want Maduro in power. If those 80% went out and vote, they can do something much easier. Stay home. Don't go to work. Stay in your house on a national strike. And now they have a problem, those in power. Because what they're going to do? Send 10 soldiers to each house to take people out and put them to work, take them out and kill them. Now, that works in my view. Now, if you put a group of people protesting, you go there with one guy with a machine gun and those people disperse, end of story. But if you get people to go on a strike, that kind of revolution, I believe, can happen. But those of going to the streets and protesting only create more divide and conquer. And the more divided you are, the less likely you are to achieve any change that is significant in your country. That's my view, Evelyn. Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Well, because we're seeing something similar in the United States with the Biden debacle. I mean, the man can't put two words together and make any sense. He's not functional and everybody knows it. Yet the government is continuing to move on under whose direction? Because it's certainly not Kamala, which is another, what's the word? Non-compos mentis individual. And the people are definitely behind Trump in the poll and all the surveys that they do. And now, with the media that's under their control, they're erasing everything that Kamala said, and they're putting in things that she didn't say or do. And so it's a big fiasco. Personally, I don't think we get to have elections in the United States. It's so far gone, that I don't think elections are not a remedy at this point in the United States. And they are saying so. They're saying that they're going to rig the elections, by hook or by crook. And Kamala is not going to be the president. They're going to throw somebody else in at the last minute during the convention. It's ludicrous. It's such a free-for-all. There's no rhyme or reason to anything that they're doing because they're not following any type of protocol. They're just doing they're just throwing everything onto the walls to see what sticks, because it doesn't really matter to them. They have it rigged already. I mean, that's
Yeah.
my opinion.
Yeah. In the US, like the first question that you in the beginning, like who is controlling the government? I maybe should make a video about this, but to me, Biden has always been controlled by Obama. Now, who controls Obama, I do not know. But the reason I say that because the staff that is very close to Biden are the same staff, chief of staff, and people that were very close to Obama. And also the two families seem to be very, very close, like very, very good friends. Also, when Obama was chosen to be the candidate, there was, I think, a primary between him, or the Democrats had to choose between him and Biden. Now, one thing I have to say about Biden, I think his loyalty to the Democratic Party is on paramount. On paramount, like, is impossible for anyone to ever match his level of loyalty. I think since 1979, he's extremely loyal to the Democrats, so loyal that he let it go the chance to be president, to become vice president in a very friendly manner. And even when Obama made mistakes, even after him being president, Obama called him the vice president of the United States of America. He still took that very diplomatically as a joke. So I think Biden has been controlled by Obama and his staff, definitely. Now, I want to have a discussion tomorrow about the protocols, because the US is like the Democratic Party are violating certain protocols. And it's amazing because they are the ones saying that Donald Trump wants to violate the constitutions. I'm not sure how constitutional it is what they're doing. So if you guys don't understand what we're talking about, those who are not Americans, in America, they're supposed to have a primary. And a primary is where the political parties may choose or may have a candidate chosen. So they can say, for instance, candidate A and candidate B are our choice. But I think when the population go to vote, they can choose a different name, a different candidate which is not named on the primary. So what's happened with Kamala Harris right now, there has been no primary, and he's just the candidate for the Democratic Party. I think that's one thing. The second thing, which I think is important for the people to realize here, because there's a discussion about the third party. And in the US, as far as I understand, you cannot have any third party win, because the way it happened is there is no gradual division of votes. So for instance, the population vote for a president, and then the representative vote for the president, and the representatives may choose someone else. But for instance, if there's 101 votes to choose one president, and there's just one vote difference, it goes 100% to one side. So there's no gradual division of votes. Whenever it goes to 50% plus one, it goes entirely to another party. That's why that dynamic does not allow for a third party. Whereas, for instance, in Brazil, the percentage of votes get equally distributed as the percentage is, whereas in the US, that doesn't happen. So I'm not sure how constitutional, I think Vitamra has something to say about that, or Ross. I'm not sure how constitutional it is, the idea of the Kamala not going to a primary. Ross, you want to speak on that, Tamara? I do not know enough to speak on that, though. I want to research today and talk about that tomorrow. I'm not an American.
Well, you know what? I'm just realizing, Booth, that you just pointed. I mean, I've heard of this and I've been watching headlines, but I didn't quite understand what it meant until you just actually just spelled that out. That they really, it took it away completely, 100%. If you believe in primaries, they took it completely out of the hands of the people, and it just went right over them. I don't know why they're not upset about that.
Yeah, I think some Republicans are complaining about that. To me, as an outsider, because I'm here in Europe, and again, I'm not trying to insult any American position. Ross, can you speak, Ross? Or I don't want to cut off Ross.
I'm here. I think there's a difference between what people want and what can actually happen. And so unless and until there's a court case that's settled by the Supreme Court, it is what it is. So that's just kind of where I stand on it. And I think maybe the conversation tomorrow, we can go more in depth with those who actually have studied that, you know, the background and the laws and the Constitution. But one thing I do know is that if it was unconstitutional, there would be definitely an uprising. So I think both parties are, let me say, have their issues, needless to say. But I also think that she has gotten more support and than people realize and or thought she would get. I think that surprised a lot of people. And yeah, in my opinion, it just is what it is. So I at this point, I don't think there's anything that's going to change it unless you do have some delegates that, that flip when it comes time, to make the selection. That's the only way it would happen at this point.
Yeah. So the delegates that Ross is mentioning, for those who are maybe not Americans, like, are the politicians that can choose the president. So the people vote for the political position for, I think, for the delegates, right, Ross? And then they vote for the president, but still the delegates are the ones who decide where they cast their vote towards on the presidency. Am I correct on that, Ross? That's how I understand
Yeah, yeah, that's pretty much it. The delegates represent let's just say an area to simplify it. So if you're in New Jersey, and there are different I don't know, counties. I'm simplifying it. I know this is, not necessarily the language, but to better understand it, then there's a delegate that represents that area or district of the people that voted.
Yeah.
So, but the delegate doesn't have to vote the will of the people.
Yes.
Ideally, that's what should happen, ideally, but they actually don't have to vote the will of the people. And a lot of people don't understand that. And so that is allowed.
Yeah, so the US is not a direct democracy, as most countries may be familiar with direct democracy, where the will of the people decides who the leaders are. In the US, the will of the people decide delegates, and delegates decide what goes on in terms of choosing the president. It doesn't have to be. I just want to make sure people understand that. Go ahead, Evelyn.
Well, the controversy with the Biden switch was that they're claiming there was a coup that took him out because he didn't want to not run. And then they automatically just put Kamala in his place, which was illegal according to the Constitution. She could only run as a viable candidate in the position of president, which is different. The thing that kicked everything off was that automatically they transferred the money, the campaign donations to Kamala's war chest, and that's illegal according to the Constitution. So they had to return the money to Biden, and she had to raise her own money for her own campaign. The third issue is we don't know who her vice president is going to be, because until things are settled at the DNC, where they actually nominate the individuals that are going to be, the country is at a standstill because you don't know who's going to be on the opposing side. That's the other thing. And there are a lot of illegalities with how the Democrats are moving ahead with this. One of the things that the Republicans are challenging is the fact that there was a coup to keep Biden from running. He was elected by the people. And so with them negating that and putting Kamala instead, that's another issue. And the next issue is Biden has not turned over his delegates to Kamala. He has not said you can have he has endorsed her after saying he wasn't going to, but he has not given her his candidates. So that's an issue that he has to renounce them or give them to the candidate at large. And we don't know who that is yet. Because unless all the nominees are presented at the DNC, it's like Trump is saying you can't set a debate for the vice president because we don't know who is going to be vice president or even president. So it's something that's unprecedented. This has never happened in American politics. And there's a lot of illegalities occurring. And I don't think the people are aware of all of the issues involved in what they are doing. They are usurping the law, the constitution of the land. They are usurping the will of the people. And, I think until the DNC, you're not going to see what their complete plan is, because it's not going to be Kamala. I can guarantee you that. The word is probably Michelle Obama. And who her running mate is going to be, we don't know. But they think it's going to be Newsom because of the Pelosi influence. That's what we hear, but we don't know until it actually happens.
I think they have until the 7th of August, right, to run that. Ross rolls her hand. Go ahead, Ross.
Yes, I think there's a lot of misconception about what's happening. First of all, Biden had not been, let me say this, until the Democrats have their convention. Right now, Kamala is, of course, doing her campaign or whatever, and campaigning to run for president. Biden didn't put her there. If the Democratic Party is okay with supporting her, I don't understand why Republicans are upset with that, since it really is a Democratic Party issue that they would have to settle. But as far as any other candidates, if any other candidates can choose to raise money or choose to campaign, they can do that as well, even if it's not under the Democratic Party, just like Kennedy, was doing. So the narrative that Biden chose her or elected her, whoever decided, or whatever the strategy is of the Democratic Party, that's just their strategy, right? And obviously any party believes that they will want to put the person up front who has the best chance of winning, just like they did in the Republican Party. So nothing has been settled until the Democrats have their convention and until the delegates vote. That's it.
When is that, Ross? What was the last date, Ross, for that?
I don't know off the top of I really don't know. I'm not sure.
I heard it was August 7th, because we're like
very
close to the election.
Correct. It's coming up real soon, probably. I heard within the next week or whatever. So all the questions that are being asked and all the things that people that are unclear will be settled in. So nobody's forcing anybody to do anything. At the end of the day, it just is what it is. So we just move forward and see what happens.
I just want to give I don't want to pick sides. I just want to give the view from here in Europe, like Australia, from outside, right? From outside, it's looking very messy for the Democratic Party. Of course, we don't vote. I'm not saying this because I think the rest of the world, of other countries of the world, should have a right to vote. But what is my concern as an outsider, And again, I want to be in a world where America remains the superpower and remains being the strongest economy on the world. Like it's just looking very messy for the world outside this whole situation with Biden and his health. And I happen to know someone who lives close to where Biden went, because I think he got ill. He went to his house in Philadelphia while he was ill, and that's when this whole thing happened. For the outside world, they don't believe that Biden wanted to go down, because he kept saying, "I'm not coming down, not coming down." And then we saw like Walt Disney withdrawing funds and other people withdrawing funds from the campaign. And there's the view from outside that Biden has been forced to quit the campaign. I'm not saying like positive or negative. I'm just saying like the view for the world outside is looking very messy for the US. Does that make sense, Ross? I'm not trying to speak outside. I'm just saying like how it's being perceived from the outside.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It's all a mess on both sides. That's what I'm saying. It really is. But this is the thing though. People are not happy with the idea that let's just say Biden, God forbid, passes away today. Kamala Harris will be president. That's the way things work. And that's in line with the Constitution, right?
Yes, that is.
Yeah. So I don't know why people are so upset when what the Constitution says, right, is that if something happens. Now, I'm not saying that she is the president now, because she is not. I want to make that clear. Everyone knows she's not the current president. He is the current president. Anyone can run for president for the next term. Now, I don't know, people, and this is what I also don't understand. The on the Republicans or whoever was saying that Biden's not fit and he shouldn't be, quote unquote, shouldn't be president, shouldn't be running for president, shouldn't be running for another term. Well, now he isn't, and they're still complaining. He's not running, and they're still complaining. So it's like no one is happy. There's no satisfying everybody. It just that's why I say.
So I want to say something to you, like from the European part of the world, right? The people that I spoke, people that I respect and spoke here in Europe, the reason why they did not want, I'm talking about within the US. I'm not sure what's happening within the US. I'm talking about outside the US. When I talk to people here outside, the reason why they didn't want Biden to run for another 4 years is specifically because if something happened to him, they are afraid that Kamala Harris is going to be running the show. Like European countries are concerned of, and Australia for that matter as well, are concerned about Kamala Harris being in power, and she seems to be much more extreme left than Biden, given his situation and the situation he finds himself in. So for the rest of the world, like the fact that now Kamala Harris is running is like the realization of the nightmare of the outside world before Biden even run. Does it make sense, Ross?
Well, yeah, it makes total sense. I get it. Yeah.
Yes.
And so I understand that. And I think that's what a lot of people didn't want to happen, but that's actually what is. And people that she is running. I'm not saying she's going to win. I don't know who's going to win. The race is really close right now. That's assuming, let me say this, that's assuming that after the convention or at the convention, the Democrats vote for her, as a Democratic nominee. So if we assume that, then she's the Democratic candidate. And right now, she has just as good of a chance as winning as Trump does. I think it surprised a lot of people the way it played out. And I think people are just reeling from that. And so I do understand. I really, really do. But at the end of the day, this is where we are. Yes.
So the other concern that I heard from outside, Ross, is, and Evelyn also, in terms of anyone who is in America, I want to get your idea on this, is the concern that I want to talk about friends in Australia and friends in Europe have is that if the US is voting on the best possible candidates, or they're voting based on identity politics, like, oh, she's a woman, she's a Afro-descendant, then she has to be the chosen one. And because that kind of choice has occurred for instance, some judges, I saw some posts on X that there are three judges high judges in New York, I think, and they're all women and they're all Afro descendants. Like, what are the likelihood of them being the most competent? So the fear that is here from Europe and some other in Australia is like, is the US actually gonna vote based on identity politics, and she's gonna win because of that approach? Because that would be like the last nail on the coffin for a lot of people here as an outsider. Am I making sense? For those in America, I'm just
Yes.
asking a question.
Yes, you are making sense. And the reality is that's what happens in every election, whether on both sides. And I think people don't understand that it's going to happen. You know, I would be lying and delusional to think that it wouldn't happen. So you're absolutely right. There are people voting for Kamala, some voting because she's a woman, some voting because, you know, she's a minority, you know, whatever her background is, right? And some voting to just because they refuse to vote for Trump. You got all those elements in play right now. And so
Okay.
I can't say that there's any one particular group, you know, but yeah, that's just part of humanity in general, with our own, you know, biases and our own vision. It happens every election. So I don't think we'll ever get away from that.
Yeah, I think the elections in the past was not like that. And one example I can give is like Mexico, right? The majority population are Catholic, and they have a female president who is a Jewish woman. And that shows to the world that Mexicans are voting not based on identity politics. And they think that that kind of voting tends to increase the likelihood of being a sound vote and giving better results than assuming that someone with the same minority group of me would be the ideal. And I think that's a concern that the rest of the world is seeing. Like, is the population within the US really throwing the rationale aside and prioritizing identity politics? I'm not sure if that's a concern within American population, but it seems to be a concern from like people that interact outside the US. I'm not sure how it's for you, Tamara, Evelyn, because I think guys are also American. So I'm curious about what is your view on that, both of you. Can you guys hear me? Tamara, Evelyn?
I can hear you. I'll
Yeah, I can hear
respond.
you.
Okay.
Tamara, go ahead.
Tamara, go ahead, Evelyn.
No. I said I could hear him. Go ahead, bro.
Okay.
No, I'm just like curious about my. Okay, go ahead, Russ. I'm just curious about the question I asked. Go ahead, Russ.
Yeah, it happens. Again, even not just on the Democratic side, it happens on the Republican side too. There are people who were voting for Trump because they refused to vote for minorities or a Black person, someone who's considered Black or has African American in their gene. There are some who are voting because they refuse to vote for a female, right? It is happening on both sides. And you know, we just have to accept humanity that no, it's not going to be ideal, you know. And it just is, people are going to vote whatever moves them. And that's it's just like people were surprised when Obama won, right? Okay. And so of course there were many who voted for him because, again, first African American, you know, president, whatever. There are some who still did not want to vote Republican for whatever reason. And so as different candidates come forth, you know, as different the elections evolve, anytime you have races like this, the election race like this, the political race, and if there's a difference, if it's not I'll say a white male against a white male, right? Anything that changes that dynamic, you know what I'm saying? Or a black male against a black man, you're always going to have those biases where people are going to choose, based on what they believe is most important to them. It's just a reality of humanity.
Yeah. One thing I'm saying, Ross, from outside though, I'm not talking about each side. I'm talking about like the American population in general. If that's the result, like it's concerning for the rest of the world. But I also saw Evelyn and Term on mic. I'm curious about like I'm not for either side. I'm not in America. I'm not Republican. I'm not Democrat. I'm just an outsider.
Same.
But I saw Tamara. Can you speak on this? And then Evelyn.
Clarify your question again.
So my question is, like, the European people that I interact with, they are really concerned about, is America that divided where they're going to vote based on identity politics and not like common sense? Like, for instance, in Mexico, there is a Jewish woman and 90% of Mexico are Catholic, right? So men voted for her, women voted for her, Catholics and Christians voted for a Jewish female president because they think she's capable. So you see, for instance, Mexico, even though it's very close to the US, the vote is not based, oh, I need someone from my minority group to best represent me, but they're looking for someone who may show best capability. The question is the American population as a whole that divided into this, or that submerged into this identity politics where it doesn't matter who's qualified, it matters.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I don't look at the data for the whole United States, but I will tell you what's happening in my own family and circle. I have children and relatives and friends who have openly, without even hesitating, say that the biggest reason to vote for Kamala is because she is, some of them will say first Black American, Black woman, or they will say, they'll rephrase that and first female president, first woman of color, however they describe it, that is their reason for voting. And if I ask them for political reasons, for her political beliefs, accomplishments, things that she's involved with right now in her role as vice president, if I ask anything, for the most part, I either get gaslit and I am frowned upon because I'm not supporting first woman president. And honestly, that the conversations never go anywhere. I can't get them to talk about issues. So yeah, in my family, in my circle, there is only one reason to vote for her, and probably party line as well.
Okay.
A big part of it. So
yeah, Evelyn, go for it, Evelyn. I feel sad for accountants in that situation. I really feel sad. Go ahead, Evelyn.
Well, that's a reality. I agree with Ross and I agree with Tamara on both issues. And the reason why I think we're not dealing with accomplishments and we're going with the other reasons of being the first Black woman, identity politics instead, is because Kamala doesn't have a record to stand on. The only record that she has to stand on is the identity politics. And if you watch the media, that's what they're pushing. They're pushing that highly every single day across every single channel in every single form of media, because that's the only thing that they can run on at this point. Kamala's popularity is not what they say it is. Her accomplishments are negative. And I agree with you, Boof, that the people in Europe are very afraid of the fact that we're going to have an extreme leftist as president, because if you look at her record and her background, both parents, this extreme leftists, her record as a prosecutor in California was abysmal. She put a lot of African American men in jail just to have a labor force. And the list goes on. She's a very extreme individual, and in my opinion, incompetent and against people who oppose her, or she can use as to her benefit. Her family were slave owners, and this is, recent. This is not. This is the most recent history. She's of Jamaican background. And if people actually did their background work on Kamala, I think that they would be shocked because it's so far from what the media is saying. And, that is what I have found personally. So I understand what's going on. We're in a psyop. The media, is reaching these people. And the way that Ross said, it's the same identity politics on both sides. So, are we going to rise up above that? I really can't tell you if we are or we're not, because you have to have the will to find the truth. And if people are not willing to look into the truth, then, what is there left to do?
Well,
And basically, that's what it's coming down to. Because if Kamala was the border czar, and that was an abysmal, we have millions of people in this country illegally, many who are against the United States, unvetted, most of them criminals and terrorists. And that's an explosion waiting to happen. And that's all due to her administrative duties. So people can say what they want, but if you really look at what actually happened and what the history is behind everything, I think most people would be shocked in reality.
yeah, I look at some background from Kamala, and like as a prosecutor, I was very like impressed. And I also like I want to make a video again on a YouTube channel talking about Obama, and because I say things people don't know he did, like he ordered the murder assassination of American children and women and children abroad without due prosecution. So, but people don't realize that that's anti-constitutional as well. It's like against the American Constitution. But because he's after descendant, no one even mentions that. Yeah, I feel sorry for a country that is that far down into identity politics. And again, I'm not talking about political party, but we're also 14 minutes over the hour. I want to thank everyone for their presence here. See you guys tomorrow on Academy. For those who are in Academy, see you guys in Clubhouse. I must let you guys go, and thank you for your presence, and thank you for the discussion. Thank you guys. Take care.
Bye.
So.